morning. Y'all excited to be here? Yay! You guys, I can't believe this is here. I'm Carrie Howell. I'm the executive director with the Alliance, and yes, I cried already with watching the parade. So Mike Porath is going to start making his way up. I think he's close by. Yep, there he is. I just want to welcome you. I'll be up a little bit later, and you guys just relax. As someone said earlier, you're home. Don't worry if your child needs special attention or whatever. Welcome to your family. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. All right, is this mic working here? Can you guys hear me? All right. Thank you all for being here. I was one of the people raising my hand for 3+ conferences. This is my 7th conference. Our first was in Indianapolis, and we had met one family before going there, and it was a whirlwind. It was an emotional roller coaster, and I kind of screwed up. So I'm going to give you a warning so you don't do the same thing I did. It's just there's so much information, and again, emotions run high. My in-laws came with us. We had our daughter Annabelle, and Isaac was, I think, about 5 or 6 months old then. And anyway, so we're having a conversation, and I don't think I said anything wrong, but I kind of said it in like a snippy, type manner. And my mother-in-law got upset, and my wife yelled at me, and I apologized. So just try to be gentle with each other while you're here, because there's a lot going on, and you don't know how people are responding to all of it. I actually left the room to try to kind of just cool down, and I was walking past the hotel lobby, and a guy named Ron Bruce saw that I was a newbie there, and they were gathered. He and a bunch of the other parents were gathered at the bar, and he pulled out a seat and brought it over to me, and he said, join us here. And I say that because I felt so welcome into that. That was really the first kind of welcoming into the community. So if you're a veteran here, pull a chair out for somebody. Invite them over to the table at lunch or breakfast or something like that. And if you're a new person here, even if you're not particularly outgoing, this is your time to be outgoing. We are a network of complete strangers, with the exception of the fact that we have kids with the same rare disease. And so we get together around this, and I don't want anyone to miss the opportunity to really, find those connections by helping somebody else or trying to just reach out, as well. So that was, again, my first experience. So this is a photo of my family. I got my wife, Sarah, over there holding Noah, our youngest, who is 3. Isaac is 14, Henry 11, and Annabelle 16, soon to be 17. She's our daughter with Dup15q. This photo is pretty memorable for me, not just because we're all looking at the camera, because that's very rare, but also this was about a year ago, and it was actually the first time in 5 months that we had all gotten together as a family. Last year was a particularly difficult year, which I'll get into. For us, we live in Los Angeles, and I moved with my daughter to Atlanta for an autism program for kids with severe behavioral issues, which I'll get into. But it was challenging. Well worth it. We're very happy that we did it, but that doesn't mean that it was a particularly fun year with the family split up. But we're mostly smiling there. It was good to get back together. So this is Annabelle when she was 2. This is when we got her diagnosis. And granted, the science wasn't as good back then. A little harder to get the diagnosis. We spent the first 2 years, she was our first child, and we talked to a lot of doctors. Clearly, there was things that she was not developing like a typical kid. And we finally, after, I think it was about 18 months of different doctors up and down the East Coast where we were living at the time, we found someone who said, there's clearly something wrong here. We're going to get to the bottom of it. And the way we found out, he said, let's just run a genetic test. Very unlikely that you're going to get anything from it, but your insurance pays for it. And it was that test that actually gave us the diagnosis. And I remember that particular day. You guys all have the diagnosis story, right? They're all unique in some way. For ours, we went in for my wife's ultrasound with Isaac, who was about 20 weeks coming along, and they told us in that appointment that he was missing an organ, a kidney, and they feared that it could be far worse. And we got back from the hospital, and about an hour later, we get a phone call from the doctor who got us the genetics test. and he said, your daughter has this rare disease. I've never heard of it before. I read up on it, and it sounds like she'll never develop beyond that of a 5-year-old. And so in a matter of a couple hours, we just got, it was a gut punch, right? Now it turns out Isaac has 1 kidney, but everything else is put together well. I don't even think about it anymore. So he's good. But obviously life with a child with Dup15q is challenging. And so, that was, kind of how we got into it. Now, I have some drawings that my kids will over there probably making fun of. My 3 boys are here. Annabelle and my wife are back home in Los Angeles. But this is the experience that I had, and I think it should resonate with a lot of you. We get that phone call, and I think of this as the sea of questions. You don't know what this means for your future, your daughter's future, your son's future. You're not sure what type of doctor you should go see. You don't know if therapies are in order, what type of education system. It's just a mess. And there's nothing to kind of help you out. We didn't find the Alliance at that point. The thing that helped us out most is actually, I went searching online. I went to Google like everybody else, and I found an old PDF file. The older folks here will remember this as the Mirror, where there were stories of families living with children with Dup15q. I couldn't find barely any research out there. There was a couple articles in Italian. They were not helpful to me, but I found these stories of folks like you. And I remember reading them, and I was struck by how powerful they were. Now, I spent most of my career as a journalist. I worked at ABC News, NBC News, the New York Times. I was a storyteller, and yet reading these stories of families like ours was incredibly powerful. It's where I heard the first-hand accounts of autism and really began to understand what it was like. I read stories of kids having seizures 30, 40, 50 times a day. It was jarring, it was scary, but at the same time, there were stories that had humor and joy in them. And that made me feel that I wasn't alone at this, that if these other folks out there could do this, then I could probably do this too. My wife and I could do this too. And I remember telling her, I showed her the articles, and I said, you got to read these. And I remember the feeling of wanting to find these families and take them out for a beer. And I just wanted to listen and understand better what they're going through, which I thought could help me as well. The problem was, this is almost like pre-Facebook times, there wasn't really a network to connect any of them. There weren't a place where I could ask questions or anything like that. And so, in my own mind, I began developing this idea of how should healthcare work? Again, my kids could probably do a better drawing than this, but the idea behind this is, what if healthcare worked in a way where you could get doctors, the parents, the caregivers, the patients, the therapists, researchers, any given day, whatever you're dealing with, get the right people together. And not in a doctor's office, but what if you could do it at home? What if you could have them over for dinner, have a glass of wine, have real conversations around that? That's the way I wanted things to work. And so my wife and I started a health community called The Mighty. And this is where people can share stories, offer questions, answers, connect. We have millions of people as part of this platform now. And it really started with the stories. It really started with your stories that were in the Mirror back in those days, and the impact they had on me. And I wanted to start something that could have the same impact across, really any health condition. So I'm going to share just 2 snippets of stories that I think can, kind of help us understand the power of them. This first story was the first story ever submitted to The Mighty. We've published over 50,000 now. And the second one is, I think, probably the most impactful story that we've ever published. This first one, a woman in South Dakota, submitted this story, and it was amazing how it flew like wildfire across the internet. And it was because of the authenticity and that she found something beautiful in something so tragic. So her daughter, when she was pregnant, she realized that her daughter was not going, she had a rare disease, and it was clear that it was fatal, that she was going to give birth to this girl, and she was not going to, really survive all but an hour or so. And so she was, preparing herself for this. And so when her daughter was born, she lived for 23 minutes. But the experience of those 23 minutes is what this woman wrote about. Yes, my heart was filled with so much sorrow, but Lila reminded me what real joy felt like, and that you cannot know one emotion without the other. Lila made it known in my heart that life is fleeting and my loved ones deserve to know how much I cherish them, her tiny existence spoke volumes. She goes on to write about how these 23 minutes with her daughter changed the way she viewed life, changed the way she interacted with people. And we started seeing hundreds and hundreds of comments on this story because there are so many people out there that were experiencing this type of grief, didn't have a place to go, didn't have people to talk to. And that's really what stories can do. They provide this vehicle to build community. And so this was the first one we published, and it was amazing the impact that we saw that have. The second one that I want to share with you was written by a woman named Jody Betty, who has struggled with mental health issues to the point of having a lot of suicidal thoughts. And she wrote a story, this was a few years ago, and the title we gave it was, "I Want You to Want to Live." And it was a really heartfelt, empathetic, non-judgmental piece. Started with, "Dear you, if you're reading this, there's a small piece of you that wants to hold on." And it was really a letter to anybody that was in that moment struggling with the same thing that she'd struggled with, is why you should stay here, why you should, why you want to live, the people who love you, and all of those types of things. So we started seeing it go from 1,000 readers a day to 5,000 to 10,000 readers a day, and we were wondering, how are people finding it? And it turned out people were typing in the phrase, "I want to die," into Google, and that was the first story that was popping up for them. And so when we started looking at, again, the thousands of comments pouring in at that, we started seeing ones like this. "Thank you, you just saved my life." And again, it just speaks to the impact that just sharing our experiences with each other can really have. So one of the things that we did with this story, I happened to be at a healthcare conference, and I was sitting at a table with a gentleman who was a psychiatrist at Harvard, and he worked on a team that studied suicide. We began talking about this, and I was saying, we're seeing an impact here, but we don't know how to measure it. And he said, well, our team does. He said, my gut is that this is actually really helping people, but there's a chance it's actually triggering people. And I said, well, let's figure out how to do this. So we got our teams together to do a research project to find out, are these stories actually, helping people? And the results were that by just sharing, people reading one story a day for 2 weeks, they were having fewer suicidal thoughts. And he was like, this is amazing. This is a free thing for people. And we should just, be sending these out to far more people. And I wanted to know, well, why is it happening? Why is it having this impact? And so I will not take you through the whole study. It was the first time I ever heard the term bibliotherapy. But it was the idea that, again, just reading somebody else's story can have a big health outcome, a big impact on someone. And so the entire story, to me, the entire research project boiled down to two things, is reasons people were feeling better. The number one was optimism. And so people began to take a more optimistic attitude when they were talking with others, when they were, again, reading these stories. And the second was social connectedness. And that just means they feel less alone. They feel more connected. And when I think about this conference, that's what I want you guys to all get out of it. That's what I get out of it. I end up leaving this after a few days feeling more optimistic, feeling more connected, to all of you. And so my goal for however many more slides that I have is to hopefully have you take this away of you feeling more optimistic, feeling more connected to all of these people that are around you. These are the world's experts right now. We've got doctors, we've got researchers, but most importantly, we have the families. We have all of you that live with this every day and are trying to help each other out. So the one thing that was a little confusing to me when we did get the diagnosis, my wife ordered these bracelets, you got them all at your tables now, and they have the word believe on them. And I didn't understand what that word was supposed to mean. It kind of felt hokey to me. I don't really wear jewelry. I don't usually wear a watch. I wear a wedding ring, but really nothing else. And my wife wanted me to wear this, and I was like, what am I supposed to believe in? It's a disease that doesn't have a cure. I want to help her, but I didn't really get the path forward for us. And so I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the path forward for your children with Dup15q syndrome, the path forward for your families, your marriages, your kids, and then also the path forward for the Dup15q Alliance. Ann and Lisa did a great job updating everyone. I'm on the board as well. I could not feel more optimistic about where this organization is going and the people that we have around it. So let me tell our family story from the beginning. My wife and I went to high school together. She was the homecoming queen. I was as far as possibly removed away from being the homecoming king. But she had this great smile, and we had a class together, and so I asked her to the dance, and she said yes, and that's where our journey kind of started. We actually used this photo from that dance as our save the date card, and my uncle called my dad and said, "Mike looks really young in this photo." I happen to really like the tie that I'm wearing. I think I was, Dr. Smooth there. We ended up not really, talking much during college. Sarah went to school at Fordham in New York. I went to William & Mary in Virginia, but moved to New York. And it wasn't until a mutual friend got us together that we realized we were both actually living in New York City. Went to an Cleveland Indians, now Guardians, and Yankees baseball game. And we just started talking, and our groups of friends started hanging out more and more. And then eventually, and it's too bad Sarah's not here to tell the story because I'm being honest when I say this, she cornered me in a bar and said, "Are you my boyfriend?" And according to her, I had two responses. First response was I busted out laughing, which is probably not what I should have done. And the second was I said, "What does that entail?" I didn't know. So 5 years later, we get married. Great ceremony with lots of friends and family and all of that. And we will be celebrating our, I hope I get this right, 19th anniversary next month. This is one of my favorite photos of us because of, we're smiling so much. The reason we're smiling so much is our 4 kids were not within 400 miles of us while we were like this. And I have a real point to make here, and this is one of the do as I say, not as I do. We agreed a long time ago, I think it was on kid 2, maybe kid 3, that we were going to take a long weekend every year just for ourselves. And we did that for like 2 years maybe. And we try to do it, I don't think, it's been like 3 years since we've been able to do that. And I think you guys all understand, reasons why it's difficult to get the right type of care, for our children with Dup15q. But I really think it's important, and we've had just so much fun. This was, we were hiking in Yosemite National Park here, and I just think it's, if I could give you a couple tips, I'd say like when we are able to get away, it's just, sometimes even on date nights we say we're not allowed to talk about the kids, and then it's like a minute goes by and we're like, what are we going to talk about? But I think it's really important to not just have lists of things to do and I'll go do this and take out the trash and who's going to get who to school and those types of things. But when you think about your marriages going forward, we found that when we can get away, it's certainly helpful. The other thing we try to do, and we're much better at this, is give the other person the opportunity to go visit friends or to get away and do things like that. And we just think that it's really a healthy thing for us to take a break, take a step back from everything, go have some fun with friends, even if we can't do it together. And those things have, I think, been really helpful to us, in our marriage. So one of the times I let her, she asked to go away to London, not for a long weekend, but for 9 days. And she was going with her sister-in-law on the other side, and her mother-in-law on that side. And anyway, so she goes off, and this is me taking a photo of, Noah was too young, so we only had 3 kids then. And I said, I got this. I got no problems with this. I had a full-time job. I had just started the Mighty. And so I was, doing that startup. And I had 3 kids, including one with Dup15q to take care of. Like, no problems at all, right? This is day 3. So when you reach a moment like this, there are 2 options. There are do the dishes or go for Happy Meals. I took a vote. It was unanimous. We all decided we're going for Happy Meals. But it wasn't just food we were running out of. It wasn't just the dishes that needed to be done. The laundry started piling up. And so I told the kids, wear whatever you want that's still left in your drawers. I don't care. You're off to school. And this is what they chose. They went to school like this, and I didn't care. The bigger issue wasn't the dress, though. It was the dress code there. It was the fact that we were running out of food. And so this is what I sent Henry to preschool with. I don't know if you can read that. It says, sorry, running low on groceries, Dad. And the reason I bring all this up is because we all fail at stuff all the time, and I think we ought to cut ourselves a little bit of slack. The interesting thing about this is I did get a phone call not too long after this. It was not from Henry's teacher. It was not from Child Services. It was from someone running a healthcare conference in Las Vegas for 7,000 people who asked if they could fly me out to name me Caregiver of the Year. And my first thought was, they do not look at my social media because I posted all those photos about what was going on at home. And I have tried to use this award in some different ways. I haven't found the right way, like, having a conversation with Sarah saying, one of us is right and the other one doesn't have a Caregiver of the Year award. It does not fly. But in all honesty, when you or your spouse has a rough day, you could just remind them that they're already doing better than the Caregiver of the Year, and hopefully it'll make you feel a little bit better. Now I got to redeem myself and show some photos of me and my daughter doing fun stuff. But one of the threads that I've found through our life with Annabelle is every year there's a daddy-daughter dance. And these have been really fun moments for me and her. Sometimes it's worked well, sometimes it hasn't. But when I track back over the years, this was, and each one had a theme. So obviously there's a Western theme going on here. The year that was the Hawaiian theme, we were able to make it like 2 hours. We basically closed the place down, and she was just having a ball. And she'd get overwhelmed, and we'd step out, and we'd have a snack, and then she'd find her way back in. And I always promised myself, I won't be the one to say we need to leave. But then other years, it was, very, very challenging. I'm literally going to give you every photo of all of them. No, but it was, I remember the year that it was more of that, kind of disco theme in the middle. She didn't last 10 minutes. And that was, so, kind of disappointing. But year by year, we worked at it, and some years were better than others. And that's kind of how Dup15q syndrome works, right? You can never really expect what's going to happen. And this particular year was my favorite. And it started out terribly. Where she was all excited. You could see we're both smiling there. We get to the dance, and immediately she says, want to go home, want to go home, want to go home. And I'm thinking, all right, I gotta be enthusiastic and find a way to get her going. She starts pinching, she starts biting, she drops on the floor, she starts screaming. And it was just so disappointing, and it was difficult for me to kind of get her out of that whole situation into the car. And I was like, well, what are we gonna do? We were supposed to eat there, so our family gets a lot of Happy Meals. We went for Happy Meals. But we got home, and she wanted to put on a onesie. She wears onesies every night, warm, fuzzy, onesies. And so she wanted to get, dressed in her onesie, which I did. And I decided to just start playing some music, and she's got a good taste in music. Adele, the Beatles, like she's into a lot of, good music. And so we were listening to some Adele, and she just started doing a little of this. And we ended up, for probably 25 minutes, dancing in her room. She wanted to dance. It was just too overwhelming. And it was a reminder for me to kind of let her guide that. Don't always take what I want her to be able to do, but kind of let her guide me on what she's able to do. And again, one of the lessons that I've learned parenting Annabelle. So now it gets into some of the harder stuff. The last few years for us have been really, really difficult. I never would have considered her someone that was in this group of kids with severe behavioral issues. Of course, she had behavioral issues, but it was always something that we could manage until the last couple years. And I think she hit a perfect storm. It was a combination of, one, COVID, losing all of her services, when we went to Zoom school, which didn't work for her. I imagine it did not work very well for your kids either. Part two of that was hitting puberty. And part three was we were changing her medication. She was on risperidone or Risperdal from when she was about 6 or 7 until about 14, and it worked really well for her. It really helped, kind of manage the ups and downs, for her, and for her not to get, she could just cope a little bit better with it. But she got to a point where she was kind of maxing out on the dosage. And talking with, we love the doctors that we have, and we thought, okay, it's time to try something else. And I think that combination of trying something else with COVID and going through puberty was just an absolute mess for us. And so she began to get really aggressive, not sleeping. At one point she went over a week without a wink of sleep. We also had a newborn at the time, so we weren't getting a whole lot of sleep even outside of that. And it just became really, really challenging, to the point of we went from something that was more sustainable to manage to being just in survival mode, which you can do for a day, you can do for a week. Beyond that, it really gets hard to be in that mode. And so in talking with our doctors, we kind of think of her team leader. Many of you know Shefali. If not, hopefully you'll get to know her at the conference. She's the chief of neurology at the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. Previously was at UCLA. Talking with her and others, we were looking at different types of programs that could be good for her. And we're fortunate in that we know Shefali well enough that we saw her more of a social setting. She saw how Annabelle was behaving, and she said, how often is this going on? And we're like, this is daily. And she said, guys, like, we have to figure something out. And long story short, or at least shorter, she and some others suggested a program in Atlanta. It's part of Emory. It's called the Marcus Autism Center. And they have a particular program designed for kids that basically all else has failed. And so actually at the last conference 2 years ago, he spoke virtually, over Zoom to us. And I remember one of the things that had a big impact on me was right before that talk, I was standing in the back of the room, again, this conference 2 years ago, and one of the people that works with Shefali, Charlotte, was there, and she knows Annabelle and had worked with her, on the behavioral side at UCLA, and knows us well enough to be, pretty blunt with us. And the comment that she made really stuck, and she said, Mike, if your daughter had cancer, you wouldn't try to parent your way through it. And I know what she was not trying to say was, she wasn't trying to compare this to cancer. She was saying, you need help. You can't do this alone. And at that moment, I didn't realize how much kind of grief and shame had just kind of built up by not getting her what she needed, not helping her enough. And I remember calling Sarah that night and telling her, I went solo to the last conference, and I said, I think we really need to do this. And I just explained how that all the weight that I'd been, emotional weight that you carry when things are not going well, just rolled off when Charlotte said that to me. We did end up, getting Annabelle into the program. It was a 9-month waiting list. We got a call the following February and said, if you can be here in 4 weeks, we have a spot for you. So we ended up going, and I probably shouldn't be the spokesperson for Marcus Autism Center. Everyone should look at, whatever is going to be helpful to them, but it's an incredible place. This is, when you go through the doors, you see, hope, love, fun, challenging, a child's love, an opportunity to serve. Everybody in that building believes that and lives up to it, which, it's just an amazing place. On day one, we roll up, my wife and I, we couldn't get Annabelle on a plane, so we drove from LA to go out there, and I was gonna live with her in a little apartment, and she's gonna be in the program for 5 or 6 hours a day. And my wife she's really the rock of our family, and we had 3 boys, and they need to be raised and all that, so we decided it'd be better for me to go out there with her, and I could work remotely. Day one, we pull up, and we don't really know what to expect. And our biggest fear is that she's not gonna exhibit the same behaviors, and they're gonna say, she's not right for this program. It took them 45 minutes to get her out of the car. And I sat there on the curb, and I was happy, because I was like, thank God they're seeing what we see. And they come out, they're in their riot gear, they're used to all kinds of things that we had never seen before with other children in this program. And but that was kind of our moment where we went into this. And so I want to go through a little bit about what we arrived with in that program with, what we worked on there, and what we went home with. So they thought it was be a 3 to 6 month program. It was not. We ended up being there for almost 10 months. We arrived there with Annabelle being incredibly aggressive. The things that we were experiencing at home, you don't need a long list, but just to give you a sense, well, my wife was changing her diaper. She's working on potty training now, but wasn't there then. Shattered her hand in 15 places. Put her foot through the big 6-foot picture window. I walked into the bathroom while she was taking a bath at some point, and it looked like a scene out of a horror movie. Tub was in completely, red. She had appeared to have slammed her front teeth on the faucet. And just so many of these things. And she was going after the boys as well. And it was just, it was difficult. I think, many of you have been in a place where, your children, it's either leave them alone and let them work it out because we can't get close to them. They're only getting, more fired up around things, or physically having to do something, in which case it generally just escalates the situation. And that's where we were. We couldn't really find our way there. So, we had a lot of non-compliance and had a lot of therapists working with her, but they were ineffective. It really wasn't working. And so over the course of, I was there for her for 5 months, honestly just got completely burnt out. So my wife and I swapped roles. I went with the boys in Los Angeles, and she came to Atlanta. They do a tremendous amount of data collection. I think the core thing that they believe is that behaviors don't happen or behaviors do happen for a reason. We're not always great at figuring out what that reason is. And so they, beyond anything I'd ever seen, just track so much data, people working with her. They got different colored clickers, clicking things left and right. I don't know what's going on, but they're tracking all this data, and every week they start going through with us what they're seeing, which is really the why behind a lot of these behaviors are happening. And what we ultimately found was these micro steps that they would build in once we got into a treatment plan, when they felt they better understood things, were really effective. And then it was just repeating them over and over and over, and then it was on us to be really consistent with it. And that was the experience, that we had there. And as an example, when we started working with her on potty training, they broke it down into 29 steps. Step 1, she often sits in this catcher position and doesn't want to stand up. Step 1 for potty training was getting her to stand up. Step 29 was drying her hands with a towel, singing top and bottom, and it was going all the way through that. When she hit step 13, which was instead of wearing a diaper, wearing underwear, it went all the way back to 0, and we had to start over. She just, they were like, we've never seen a kid react more negatively to underwear than your daughter. And the one thing that they continued to tell us was the only thing that was consistent about Annabelle was how inconsistent she was. Which I imagine, you guys have kids that deal with some of those same things. But we worked on these things, and we started to see, real progress there. And then when we went home, which was right before Christmas, they wanted to keep us a little bit longer, but we're like, it's been almost 10 months. We want to be a family together for Christmas, and things were going pretty well. We thought we could kind of take it from there. We left with a playbook of different types of strategies based on, different things she was experiencing or displaying. That we, never had before. She left with abilities. She was putting her socks on, putting her shoes on. She was, when I went back to pick up Sarah and her, and she hadn't been potty training with me, so even though Sarah was telling me I didn't quite get it, I saw her go in the bathroom. She pulled down her pants. She sat on the toilet. She peed. She wiped herself. She pulled them up. She was doing all of these things which she had never done before, and it was that micro steps, the repetition, and the consistency. So she left with a lot more abilities, and you could tell she liked being able to do more on her own. And then the last thing is Sarah and I left with tools that we didn't have before. We, had better strategies for how to handle different situations. And the goal for this entire program was to get her to reduce her problem behaviors by 80%, which I don't think Sarah and I really bought into that could happen, and it did. Look, it's not a miracle. We're still dealing with a lot of challenges. The reason Sarah and Annabelle aren't out here is because she's still working on, we sit her on the toilet every 60 minutes, and there's a whole routine around it, and we want to kind of keep that going. And we're still a little afraid of putting her on a plane, to be honest. But we feel so much better. We feel, that we can handle a situation better. Annabelle is more independent, even in her own mind, of what she can do. And we have a playbook of strategies. And so, again, when I go back to Charlotte's comment of, you wouldn't, it was, basically just, you guys need help. That was really difficult for me to accept, that we didn't have all the answers and we were never going to come up with them on, our own. So whatever you happen to be dealing with, it doesn't have to be the Marcus Center by any means. It was not fun to be split up as a family for that long. But look for help. Look for the different places, and whatever you happen to be dealing with, that, and really lean in to try to find that, because it made a world of difference for us. This is one of the data sheets, just to see the type of thing. This is from last week. And you can see the column that says in the middle, pee in toilet. The Y's are yeses, the N's are no's, but she's generally going. The accident to the left of that, you see the N's, that means she was dry after an hour. And we still do this every day. The folks at school do this for her as well. And it's, again, really been helpful, because we look at the data. We still work with the team at Marcus Center. Once a month now we meet with them. They track all of the data that we send them and what the school sends them, and we come up with strategies of ways we can help Annabelle. Now I want to talk about siblings. I know many of you have more than just your Dup15q child. And this is something that, when Annabelle started getting really difficult, like beyond what we had experienced before, we were so focused on her that we were losing sight a little bit of what was going on with the boys. To the point where, at one point during COVID, when Annabelle was really difficult, one of the kids asked me if it was safe to come out of the room. And I'm thinking, there's only one place they can be right now, again, during the pandemic, which was home. They didn't feel safe at home. It was just heartbreaking for me. So that night, Sarah and I talked, and we were trying to figure out what could we do that could be helpful to them. There weren't a lot of places we could take them because, again, the pandemic. But we ended up deciding that, I was going to start taking them camping. It was a way that we could get out. It was a place that we could go, just being outside. Noah was just a newborn, so he had to stay with Sarah. But Isaac and Henry, the older ones, it was just something to kind of get them out and to begin to talk to them about what they were experiencing with all this. We had kind of forgotten a little bit because we were so focused on Annabelle. And this was a poem that Henry wrote that Sarah shared with me on a really difficult day when I was in Atlanta with Annabelle. And you guys know it. You have it one of those days where you just can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And she texted me this, poem, because she had gone to a back-to-school night and seen, his work there, and thought it would be helpful to me. And she had no idea. I'm going to read it. It's about the day that we left to go to Atlanta. I remember before my dad and sister left on a cold, chilly morning. I remember when we went to the wet, fresh field to play baseball. I remember when he made my brother laugh so hard it was hard to breathe. And when we would have so much fun and my heart was warm. I remember my sister being so funny, my lungs exploded. I remember every time I was with them, it felt like home. I remember when they left to go, I was cold and lost in my thoughts. Even though they're not here now, I remember when they were. My favorite memory is yet to come. That last line, I needed that so badly to think about what was forward for us, because you get so stuck in what that moment is. So on bad days, I think about that last sentence about the memories we're going to make down the road as things improve and things get better. And it just shows how much we can learn from our own kids who are dealing with a lot of this as well. And with Isaac, it's the same thing. This was, I remember I took this photo when he was in 4th grade. He's going into high school now. But who sits down as a 4th grader and says, I understand, fill in the blank, and says that my sister needs help? He's thinking about someone else. He's so empathetic. And that last one, I try to help my sister as much as I can. And I think sometimes we forget the experiences that our other kids are having. Again, how empathetic that they're becoming. They watch us, so be good around them. They learn the lessons that we have. But it's one of those things that, again, when I think about parenting, we think so much about the struggles of our children with Dup15q, but it was a reminder to me how important it is to work with these kids as well. And so going back to these camping trips, I think it was our 2nd or 3rd trip was to Death Valley, which is a maybe 4-hour drive from our house. And we're sitting around the fire, and Henry says, how many national parks are there? I had no idea. I figured maybe 25 or so. And he said, do you think we could camp in all of them? And so the next day when we had cell service, I look it up. No, there's 63 national parks. And I had already told him, yes, I thought we could. we have now, in the 2.5 years, camped in 22 different national parks with them. And it's been a really good experience, hopefully for them, but particularly for me to be able to connect with them in a way. It's been a mental health break for me in a lot of cases. And it's given us a time to bond. I think we all recognize that as families, when it's beyond your child with Dup15q, you can't, you don't want that child to be the least common denominator for everybody in the family. You still gotta, they've gotta live their lives. They have to go explore. They want to go to a Dodgers game. I want to go to a Dodgers game. Annabelle would never have fun at a Dodgers game. And so it's just, my wife and I end up, we do try to do things as an entire family, but a lot of the time we're also trying to figure out ways, what can we do just with Annabelle? What can we do just with the boys? To try to give them all the experiences that they want. But one of the lessons that I kind of got and hopefully gave them is, one of these, campfires, I used to take a book of scary stories and we'd read them, and then again, I think it was the third or fourth time, Dad forgot the book. And so we sit around and I said, well, we can still tell stories. And so we decided that one person would pick a character, one person would pick a setting, and then the other person would have to make up a story. And this actually got pretty fun. We had a really good time with this. And again, Henry dubbed these Scaretastic stories, which I thought was a great name. And as a someone who professionally has been a storyteller for a long time, I taught them about a good way to think about when you're making up a story, especially in just minutes, is to think about the end first. What's going to happen at the end? That's going to be the big moment. And then you got to figure out how you kind of get there versus starting at the beginning. And so that's, I think, helped all of us in terms of telling that story. And I want to come up with a different story, not a Scaretastic story, a Dup-tastic story. And so for the new folks here, I'm hopeful will love this. Older folks, I think, will appreciate it as well. We have been an organization for a long time, over 20 years. And we have been working on trying to get a treatment that's going to help our kids. And let me start at the end now, which is the end of the story should be the FDA approves a drug that helps our kids in all the ways we want to help them, right? It helps with their daily skills. It helps with their behavioral issues. It helps with their seizures. It helps with all of these different things, all right? That's the end of the story. Is the FDA approves this, and we get these kids the medication that's going to provide a higher quality of life for them and for us as well. Now let's go to the beginning. The beginning of that story is that we had to find, as a group of parents, and this was before I was ever involved, before our daughter was diagnosed, we had to get researchers involved, right? We had to get scientists involved to study this. And it's been years in the work. You guys will remember the mice models and all of these different things that we've done over time. And then we've got to get, a company that, produces medications, a pharmaceutical company, interested in this small group of families. And that, over time, there's been so much groundwork laid over the years. And right now, we're at a moment where we have the chief of neurology at the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, who's probably seen more kids with Dup15q than anyone in the world. Don't quote me on that, but I'm guessing that's actually true. Who's just an incredible human being. That's Shefali, and you guys will probably see her speaking. I think she's at panels across the board at this conference. We have her signing up and saying, we're going to do this now. We have Roche, one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, signing up, raising their hand saying, let's make this happen. And we have a drug that's been tested in other areas, and there's a lot of reason to believe. I'm not a scientist. I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn last night. I'm not going to try to sell you on how it all works. But there are sessions, here where they'll go through all that. But there's a lot of reason to believe it'll work for our kids. All of that's in place. The only gap we now have is the number 90, and that's how many families we need to have signed up to take part in this clinical trial to get us to where we want to go. And it's, there are some challenges with it. My daughter's too old for it. Again, you'll hear all the qualifications and who's qualified and who's not. But I know enough about it that if Annabelle qualified for this study, I would sign her up in a heartbeat. I would want to be one of those 90. I'd want to be part of the story to get us to where we're going. And so we're not asking anybody to sign up for it today, but we are going to ask you to sign up and give your email address if you're interested in it. and we'll help you figure out where's the trial site. There are going to be a couple visits that you'd have to make to a trial site that Roche covers. It's sprinkling powder on food. That's essentially the medication, so that's not a particular challenge, but it's doing it for about a year. And but if we can get to that 90, it's not just this trial either. How many pharmaceutical companies are going to say, that's an organization I want to work with? They will make this happen. And I just think we're at this moment where we've been looking for this for so long. My only other goal beyond optimism and social connectedness and making you feel like that is to get you interested and at least looking for more information to see if this could be a good fit for you and your child. Because if we get to that 90, I am confident we are soaring, right? And we will help these kids in ways that they haven't been helped before. I want to talk a little bit about, I think the syndrome that we face as families and with our children can be really, really isolating. Friends and family are never going to quite understand. They want to help us, I get it, but they're never quite going to understand what we deal with and what we face. And so putting ourselves out there has always been super helpful to me. So last year, I wrote this post on LinkedIn. Had no idea that it was going to go viral. But I'm going to read it because it's something that mattered a lot to me, and there's a good follow-up after this. So I wrote, "A mighty moment. Most days when I pick up my daughter from her autism program, the first thing out of her mouth is 3 letters, CVS. She repeats them over and over. She wants to stop at the drugstore to pick out a treat, which just might be the highlight of her day. I give her a high five. Okay, let's go to CVS. We pull up and park in a handicapped spot. I feel a little guilty as I hang the placard over the rearview mirror because as slow as Annabelle walks, she can get there. If I'm being honest, I park here because it's 50 feet less space between the store and the car where she might drop and have a meltdown. She paces the candy aisle, pointing at a large bag of cinnamon bears and looking up at me, her way of asking me to tell her about that treat. Some days this selection process takes 5 minutes, and others it may take 15. She has taught me patience. Today, she selects a lollipop that fits within a plastic Baby Yoda figure, $6.99 for a 25-cent sucker. That's ridiculous, but it's impressive marketing. As we pay for it, she points to Baby Yoda's brown eyes and says, chocolate eyes, which surprises me. What color eyes do you have, I ask. Chocolate, she says. What color eyes does Daddy have? Without hesitation, she looks up with a knowing smile and says, blueberry eyes. That spark of imagination means everything. To see her light up brings joy and pride and love. This is why we do what we do, parenting at its best. And the reason I share that with you is it's often difficult to see the sparks going on, the light inside our kids. It's there. We'll go a long time without seeing it, but in moments like that, it's there. And with all the doctors I've worked with, my wife and I have worked with over the years, one thing has been consistent around that the kids with Dup15q have much better receptive skills than expressive skills. They understand far more than they can express. And so moments like this remind me to keep working at this stuff because it's getting through. She just really struggles to come back with something. And again, that a little imagination, the way she looked at me meant everything. And so anyway, so I post this. I don't even tag CVS. It's not a point to try to really put it out there in a big way, but I run a media healthcare company, and I want people to know that this matters to me, that I'm a part of all of this as well. But it goes out and seen by over 100,000 people. And I had a colleague text me, he said, did you see who just commented on your post? I said, no, I didn't. So I went and looked, and it was the CEO of CVS. And she said, thank you, Annabelle, for making CVS one of your places to shop. We are proud to have you as one of our customers. I never spoke to Karen Lynch, but she put someone in contact with us. They sent Annabelle a whole box of goodies. Treats, they gave her a hat, they gave her a t-shirt, nail polish, all of these things. And you can see that little smirk that she's got there. She likes opening gifts. She likes opening presents. Nice handwritten letter and all that. And so it gave us a good story. So when we went back to CVS the next day, because we went every day, talking to the manager who knew us well, one of the employees there, it was the most well-run CVS I've ever been to. It's across the street from the CDC if you're ever in Atlanta. And it's, fantastic. But ended up, helping the manager kind of tell a larger story within CVS, because I was like, this guy deserves a promotion. Give this guy a raise. He runs a great store. But the point is, CVS kind of became a little bit of an extension of our community while we were in Atlanta. And it's, again, that's helpful. I want to do more of that. The person who's best at this is actually my wife. And not just with, something like CVS, but, you guys all know you win points with, you want to win points with the school board. You want to win points with, the folks that make the decisions about the IEPs and things like that. And my wife is so good at winning people over. This is one of the things that she wrote a while back. She, it's Christmas time. She gets these like $3 plants to give to her teachers, but with this note. This is a Christmas cactus. It needs a little bit of water, warmth, sunshine, love, and patience. Every once in a while, just like our Annabelle, it will surprise you and bloom. The flowers are radiant and will brighten up the room. Who better to nurture this little plant than you? We wish you years of surprising little blooms from both your Christmas cactus and all your Annabelles. So if you want to take a photo and steal this, you can. If you want to take a photo and steal mine, equally as good. But I really do think that, by putting yourselves out there, by instead of being isolated in our own worlds and all the difficulties that we live with, by expanding that community, it helps us as families, helps us as parents, and I think it helps our kids as well. We want to open that world up for them, and that work, again, broadening community, I think really helps us. So I want to talk a little bit now about, again, back in Atlanta, some of the things that we learned, and something that I took away from it. One of the hardest things was, for me, was tracking Annabelle's behavior. So I had these data sheets, and I was supposed to write down the intensity and the frequency of when she was disruptive, which meant, kicking a chair. This was an action toward an object, being aggressive toward a person, and self-injurious behavior, so pinching yourself, pulling your hair, things like that. And this sucked. I had to write down all of the stuff that she was doing and basically own up to like, yeah, this is happening too. Like, I'm a bad parent. That wasn't the intention, but that's what it felt like. And so as I was doing this and just feeling worse and worse when she wasn't doing well, I somehow came up with another idea, which was to start tracking my behavior in ways that I could be helping her. And so as I started tracking those things for her, I kept a little journal next to my bed, and before I went to bed, I tried to write down, how did I show her love today? How did I bring her joy today? What did I teach her today? How did I make her feel heard today? And how can I do a little bit better tomorrow? And so when I think back, it's not just me, our whole family tries to do it. So how do we show her love today? That's Henry, reading her a book, me just trying to, win her over and show her how much we care about her. How do we bring her joy today? I like one of my favorite photos is hers. She got off the bus and it was smelling scented markers day. She really enjoys that. And that's our trampoline in the backyard. Isaac jumping with her. She loves doing that. What did we teach her today? She's into cooking. She's got her whole chef outfit. She's obviously happy there. Took her out on a kayak again. My parents don't live too far from Atlanta, a couple hours. Took her out there, just doing something new with her that she hadn't done before. She loves the water. How do we make her feel heard today? And I think one of the challenges that our kids with Dup15q have, imagine, not being able to communicate effectively what they want or what they need or just something that they want to do. And so really trying to what is it that she wants? And how do we respond to that? She looks in the mirror, she's sticking out her tongue, we get the whole family in there, we do it with her. We show her, we're listening to you, we're with you, all of those things. So we've kind of, embraced this. Sometimes when we're in the car, if more than one person is whining, we do a family whine, and we're all like, we just let it all out. She loves it. She starts laughing every time that we do it. And how we can do a little bit better tomorrow. And the best advice I ever got from other parents about raising a kid with Dup15q is be present in the moment. You can't predict the future. You don't know where things are going to be in 3 years or 5 years. So don't worry so much about what that's going to look like. Just do the best job you can today. And Sarah and I try to live up to that. And another aspect I think of it is bringing other people around, so it's not just us. We're fortunate to have two families, Sarah's family and my family, that are super supportive. Unfortunately, they don't live anywhere close to us on the East Coast, but they want to be helpful. They are helpful, and it's good to know that we've got them in their corner. And so whether that's family for you or friends or your teachers or their aides or whoever it can be, try to bring people in that can help you and your child with Dup15q. I want to come back to believe now. Again, when I was talking about those scare-tastic stories, one of the things that we talk about when we're choosing characters and all that is the character of the hero, is the character of the villain, is the character the victim, all of those types of things, and we kind of pick roles. And so going back to believe in this path forward, where I was confused and not sure what believe meant back then, I have a much better understanding of what believe means now, at least to me. So when I think about this path forward, let me tell you a few things I think of when I wear this bracelet. I believe unconditional love is the best kind. I believe faith and science are better friends than enemies. I believe that these kids face a world that is often too bright, too big, too fast, too loud. And I'm in awe of the courage they show to lean into it every day and try to make a little bit of progress. I've got more here. I believe that a purposeful life is better than an easy one. I believe we can do hard things. And I believe together we can do big things. I believe in the power of stories. I believe that there's nowhere your kids would rather you be right now than in this room, because it shows that you're standing up for them, you're trying, you're working for them. And I think that, I believe that we've got more resilience in this room than anywhere else in the world right now, just all that we face and how we're working together. And I believe that if your kid had the ability to tell you, they'd give you a big hug and tell you that you are the hero in their story. So thank you all for being here. I'm excited to spend the next few days with you all.
My goodness. Thank you so much, Mike. We were talking about who would be our keynote speaker, and I think it took us about 5 seconds to go, why wouldn't we have Mike Porath do this? This is phenomenal. So you'll notice in the middle of your table are some Believe bracelets. You'll also notice that we tripled in size, so I'm hoping there's one for everyone, but if you don't have one, certainly take one and wear it. And I can't imagine there's a better way to kick things off than just to reminding us just to believe, just to believe. So also a historical moment has happened. We are ahead of schedule. So we are going to take a break, and please be back in here at 10 a.m. And we're going to kick off some interesting information about what came out of our science symposium. Even if you're not into the science or you have no idea what UBE3A is, Jackie Vanderhoof's going to talk about from a mom's perspective, so I think you're going to really get a lot out of it. So please take a break. There's going to be some coffee, lemonade, tea out in the patio area, but take a break, be back here, and we'll start promptly at 10 a.m. Okay? Thank you.